It was about a year ago that there was an attempt on Donald Trump's life in Butler, PA, Butler County, PA. A year ago yesterday, to put this all in perspective, Trump and Biden had that presidential debate. It was a test balloon, really, to see if Biden was capable of conducting himself in a public forum. And, of course, he failed miserably. 16 days later was the assassination attempt on now President Donald Trump's life. That was on July the 13th. And 8 days after that, Joe Biden dropped out of the race. So a lot happened about a year ago this time. But in Butler, PA, on the attempt on now President Trump's life, the former president at that time, there was an untrained 20-year-old college student by the name of Thomas Matthew Crooks, who apparently was the lone gunman. Apparently. But we really don't know because the FBI has not been forthcoming with what exactly happened on that day and how ill-prepared they might have been for that day. And over and above all of that, just how close this whole country came to being turned upside down. Why the silence? Where's the evidence? And why were they so quick to cover up the evidence that Thomas Matthew Crooks left behind? These are questions that need answers. Somebody is trying to get them, and that somebody is about to join us. His name is J.D. Wilcox. He's a documentary filmmaker, and he has a documentary that will be released on July the 13th called Who Shot Trump? And hopefully there's some answers in that. He has certainly been doing some research about that, and he's kind enough to give us some time here on 700 WLW. And J.D. Wilcox, how are you on this glorious Saturday?
I'm great. Hello, Ken. It's great to meet you.
Well, it's great to meet you, too. It's great that we could get together like this. Now, we're less than a year down the road on this event. What prompted you to begin research into whether or not we have been told the full story about what happened on that July afternoon in Butler, PA?
Well, I've been a documentary filmmaker for a long time, almost 30 years. In fact, one of the documentaries I worked on, I've heard you talking about the Reds today. It was a documentary about Aaron Boone, who I know played for the Reds, and his father was a manager back in the day. So I've been doing documentary films for a long time. And when I saw, like everybody else did on television, the attempted assassination of President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, and then shortly after I heard that the lead suspect was this untrained college student who was a registered Republican and lived at home with his parents, and by the way, was a terrible marksman, I said, I don't really believe this story. But it's not 1963 anymore. I don't think you can take a shot at a presidential candidate and get away with it. I was pretty certain that eventually we would find out the truth, but as the weeks went on and the information about the story got less and less, I decided it was going to be up to me to get out there and find out what really happened. So that's what I did. I took a team to Butler, Pennsylvania, and we applied some modern forensic techniques to the crime scene investigation. One of those was something called photogrammetry. And what that is we scan the entire area, all the buildings, all the trees, with high-resolution cameras and a laser rangefinder. And we put all that data into a computer, and the computer constructs what they call a digital twin, which is a really accurate 3D rendering of everything that's there. And now we have a digital version of the crime scene that we can look at from different angles and determine where somebody can shoot at the president and where they can't. And we gave that digital twin to an expert in crime scene analysis, and they came up with some very interesting conclusions, in addition to some of the other interviews and evidence that we gathered on the scene. And we now have very strong forensic evidence that there was at least one additional shooter at the attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, in addition to Thomas Crooks.
One additional shooter, at least.
At least one, yes.
All right, let's back up and reverse engineer this. The rooftop where Crooks was stationed, where he was positioned, I don't think people have a very good idea of how close that was to the stage where the president was speaking. How close was that rooftop?
It's approximately 140 to 150 yards
At an angle.
From the end of Crook's, from the end of Crook's rifle barrel to Trump's ear, it's between 145 and 150 yards.
And is it safe to say that the FBI was woefully understaffed and probably did not do due diligence, at least to the extent they should have, as to where potential people like Wilcox, Thomas Crooks would have been stationed? I'm not suggesting that, but where he would have been stationed. In other words, their pre-planning for this seemed to be, at the very least, suspect.
Well, Ken, I have an excellent alibi for that day. So if people want to investigate, if you want to investigate me as a suspect, I'm willing to do that. The FBI wasn't there that day until after the shooting. The Secret Service was in charge of securing that area, all of the area, and they sort of farmed out the AGR complex to local and state authorities to secure that. However, the local and state authorities claim that the Secret Service never asked them to secure it. Consequently, the AGR building that Thomas Crooks was on top of was not secured in any way.
Okay. All right, so that's not secure. There's plenty of film that or tape that has been released in the wake of that from just amateur photographers or whatnot that saw this guy crawling around or trying to get up on the roof of this building. He was not confronted, except, we are led to believe, just at the last instant before he fired his shot off. So,
yes.
So as you did your research on this, and you came to the conclusion that there was at least one other shooter, more than one would constitute a conspiracy. That was the whole premise of the Dallas assassination of JFK, that if there was someone working with Oswald, or if Oswald was a patsy or whatever it might be, then you would have some sort of conspiracy. Did your documentary research lead you to a point where you said to yourself, okay, we've got a conspiracy going on here?
Yes, absolutely we did. In addition to the additional shooter or more that we've identified, we've also have very strong evidence that someone with inside knowledge of Trump's movements tipped off Thomas Crooks and gave him inside information that was not available to the public that helped him locate where he would put his sniper position. So we have additional shooters, and we have at least one person who had inside knowledge of the campaign event who tipped off Thomas Crooks.
And do you believe the FBI has this information as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. We know, we have a source that it told us that the FBI did the same photogrammetry crime scene reconstruction that we did. So they know what I know. And that means that not only is there a conspiracy, but there's a cover-up, because the FBI has not even spoken about this since last August. The only thing that is even close to speaking about this is a couple weeks ago, Kash Patel, the new director of the FBI, said that case in Butler is closed. I don't think he knows what I know. I wouldn't be surprised if his subordinates were keeping this evidence from him, because when you see the movie, you'll see how much evidence there is that Thomas Crooks' lone gunman is a fictional story. He was probably involved, although I'll tell you right now, I'll drop a bombshell. The government has presented no evidence that the body on the roof is Thomas Crooks. None.
Well, the body was, hang on, let's pause right there. The body was removed quickly, and the remnants of the body was cleaned up quickly, and then the body was just kind of disappeared, didn't it? I mean, where did it go?
Well, a lot of people think the body was removed quickly, but it actually laid on the roof of AGR for over 15 hours. And then it was removed the next day by the county coroner. The Allegheny County Medical Examiner's Office removed it, and they did an autopsy. And that same day, July 14th, the FBI washed all the blood off the roof of AGR. So they destroyed whatever blood and DNA was on the roof. The FBI did. And then after the autopsy of the body was completed, that body was released with the agreement of the FBI, and it was quickly cremated. as far as I can tell, Thomas Crooks didn't even have a funeral service of any kind, and his body has been destroyed.
So,
and that causes all kinds of problems.
Let me hit the brakes here on you. Why would they do that? In your opinion, why would they do that? I mean, what would be the reason why they would do that? I mean, at 63, and I was alive. I was a young guy, but I remember 63, and the thought was that if indeed there was a conspiracy, whether it be the Cubans or the mafia or whatever it might have been that were working to kill JFK, that the country could not handle the idea of a conspiracy. This is 2024. Why would that be in the FBI's best interest to do something like that?
It wouldn't be in the FBI's best interest to do something like that. It's a horrible breach of crime scene decorum to have a law enforcement agency that's investigating a crime destroy evidence. It's actually a federal crime to do that, although, as far as I can tell, nobody in the FBI has been prosecuted for that crime. Speaking about the 1963 assassination of JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald had a funeral service, and he has a grave. Yes. They could theoretically dig up his body right now if they wanted to look for more evidence. Can't do that with Thomas Crooks because the body that the authorities say was Thomas Crooks has been destroyed, as was all of the blood and DNA on the roof. So at this point, there's no way for anyone to independently verify the identity of that body because it's gone. Okay, and all the evidence associated is gone.
Right, and a lot of these questions are, understand, I'm not questioning the authenticity of what you're doing. They're just devil's advocate, just average guy in the street, just wondering, because if all of this is true, what you're saying, and you apparently have some sort of research done that we'll see in this film, why wouldn't the news media be on this? Are they? Where is the the investigative curiosity even of the right wing news media, the Foxes, the Newsmaxes of the world? Where are they on all that? Because indeed there was this conspiracy. It would be hard, I would think, to keep a clamp on this stuff. And all of a sudden, here's this guy J.D. Wilcox running around with a documentary crew that could or could not cast a bad light on the FBI. Why wouldn't the at least some part of the media be interested in this?
That's the $1 million question. I don't engage in any speculation in the documentary. I simply present the facts, and I want all the viewers to make up their own mind about what happened. I never tell anybody what to think. I just encourage them to think. If you want me to give my opinion about why I think the news media has passed on this story, I think it's because it started off under a Democrat administration with the Democrat director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, who, by the way, tried to deny that a bullet even hit President Trump that day.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
And so it started off under a Democrat administration who either badly handled it or intentionally have been covering up the evidence that they have of a conspiracy. And now it has continued under a Republican administration. And just a couple weeks ago, Kash Patel said that, the case is closed. When people see this movie and when they see the mountain of evidence that has never been explained that indicates a conspiracy and a cover-up, that's going to be embarrassing for both sides of the aisle. So there are brave people like yourself who have been interested in this and who I've spoken to, but there are a lot of highly paid reporters who are ignoring the story. One in particular that I spoke to personally was a reporter at the New York Times, because just a couple weeks ago, the Times finally wrote an in-depth story about Thomas Crooks, supposedly giving us a peek inside the mind of the Trump assassin. But they never even investigate whether he actually is the assassin. So I called the New York Times and spoke to this reporter, and I told him, look, I'm glad that you finally did something, but there's an awful lot that you don't know, and I'll come to New York and show you what I have. I'll show you the movie before anybody in the world gets to see it. And this reporter told me, that's okay. I'll wait till it comes out. Yeah. So there's a lot. Everybody is very incurious about this, and it's a pattern I've seen before. Years ago, 10 years ago, I was sitting in LAX airport in Terminal 3 when a crazy person named Paul Ciancia walked in to the TSA checkpoint and started shooting TSA agents. And I was there when this all happened. The police finally caught up and shot Ciancia, and I have a picture of his bloody body laying 5 feet away from the chair that I was sitting in. So that story almost cost me my life because I was right in the middle of it. But because the TSA screwed up that day and because the LAPD screwed up that day, that story very quickly went away because it was inconvenient. And I saw the same things happening with this Trump assassination attempt, and that's why I knew I had to get to the bottom of it, because I had seen stories like this, big stories, just disappear because they're powerful branches of the government or powerful organizations that they're inconvenient for.
Okay, so the film is Who Shot Trump? You're going to debut it at the Texas Theater in Dallas, which ironically is the same theater where Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested in 1963 for the assassination of JFK. I'm thinking J.D. Tippit. Remember the guy, the police officer he shot was J.D. Tippit. And,
yes, Officer Tippit.
And then at that point, there was just a plethora of police that just descended on that theater to arrest Lee Harvey Oswald. There's a lot of weird things going on here, but okay. So you're going to debut it in Dallas at that theater here very shortly, and then what happens? Where does it go for general consumption?
So once we show it at the Texas Theater on July 13th, a nice matinee, if any of your listeners are in the area, come on down. We'll give you some great seats. But after that, it'll be released worldwide. And not only will we release the film, but unlike the FBI, I'm going to release all of the evidence, all of the data that I've collected, the 3D model, the photogrammetry data. I'm releasing all of it so anybody around the world can download that data for free and reinvestigate what I've done. Check and make sure that I did it right. Anybody else who wants to investigate this in the entire world will be able to do that once I release that data after July 13th.
Okay, but so this is July 13th at the Texas Theater in Dallas, but do you have a platform yet for this to be released? Prime, Netflix, or anything like that? I'm just thinking that there probably aren't going to be a lot of people from the greater Cincinnati area that are going to be in Dallas on that day. Do you have a platform yet?
Yes. So if we can't get a worldwide distribution deal before then, I will release it for free on YouTube and Rumble and Twitch and every other online platform that will let me host a 90-minute movie for free. So everybody in the world is going to get to see this no matter what happens. Yeah.
Listen, good luck with this, JD. Anytime there are independent filmmakers, I love them. I spent 45 years in the local television business, and I know how difficult it is to put a documentary together, particularly one that requires the extensive research that you've done. And good luck with this, and I hope we all get a chance to see it, whether it be on those platforms you mentioned or perhaps some others. And thanks for your time here today on 700 WLW. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken. And don't worry, if you can't find it, I'll send you a copy.
Oh, me or everyone?
Well, everyone will be able to see it, but if you can't find it, I promise I'll send you personally an autographed copy.
Oh, my gosh. Well, who wouldn't want that? Good luck, JD, with this, and we'll talk again, I'm sure, when you got a project that pops up in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.